The massive chamber floated in the void between stars, a structure built by species who had mastered space travel before humans had discovered fire. Inside, holographic displays showed star systems painted red with war. The Kelrath sector had been burning for 300 years. War Master Kolvath stood before the council table, his 6 arms crossed in a display of military pride. His exoskeleton gleamed with battle honors earned across a dozen worlds. Across from him, Ambassador Thelen of the Kelrath Coalition maintained the serene expression his species was known for, though his skin flickered with colors that betrayed his exhaustion. The war between their peoples had consumed countless lives. Ships clashed in designated battle zones while both sides followed ancient protocols. 48 hours notice before each engagement. Sanctuary worlds left untouched, honor above all else. It was civilized warfare, the kind that could last forever. The Galactic Mediation Council recognizes the newly arrived delegation, the Arbiter announced, its translated voice echoing through the chamber. The doors opened. Admiral Sarah Chen walked in wearing a simple uniform, no decorations except for a small flag patch on her shoulder. Behind her, 3 officers followed in silence. The chamber's attention turned to these newcomers, these humans who had only reached the stars a few generations ago. Kolvath's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. His eyes, all 8 of them, studied the small delegation with open amusement. These soft-skinned creatures looked fragile. Their bodies lacked armor. Their limbs seemed weak, and they moved with none of the threatening grace of proper warriors. The council invited humanity to serve as neutral observers. The Arbiter continued. Your species has no stake in this conflict. You will monitor and report, helping us find paths to peace. Chen nodded once, her face calm. She took her seat at the observation platform, a position literally below the main table. A spot for those who did not matter. Forgive my curiosity, Kolvath said, his voice carrying across the chamber. But I see reports that humanity sent 12 ships to this sector. 12. He made a show of accessing his data tablet. My forward scout division has more ships than your entire fleet. Some of the council members shifted uncomfortably. Others watched with interest. Humans were unknown, untested. Many wondered if they had the strength to even survive in the larger galaxy. Chen met Kolvath's gaze without expression. 12 ships is correct. And you think this gives you authority to observe our war? The War Master's amusement was clear. Child species playing at importance. Perhaps you should return home before you see things that give you nightmares. We were invited, Chen replied simply. We accepted. Ambassador Thelen spoke for the first time, his voice carrying diplomatic warmth that his color-shifting skin contradicted. War Master, please. The humans mean no offense. They are here to learn our ways. He turned to Chen. You must understand, Admiral. This conflict has rules, sacred protocols developed over millennia. We fight with honor. Chen pulled up a holographic display. Star charts showed the battle zones, color-coded and organized. She studied them in silence for a long moment. Her officers did the same, their faces revealing nothing. You fight in designated areas, Chen observed. You give warnings before attacks. You leave certain worlds untouched. Precisely, Thelen said, looking pleased. Civilization must be maintained even in war. And in 300 years, how many have died? The question hung in the air. Thelen's skin flickered through a spectrum of uncomfortable colors. Kolvath's mandibles stopped clicking. War has costs, the War Master finally said. But we pay them with dignity. Chen nodded slowly, still studying the displays. Her eyes moved across the tactical information with an intensity that made some council members uncomfortable. She was reading the war like others might read a book, absorbing patterns and strategies. Our ships will establish an observation post, she said. We'll stay out of your way. See that you do, Kolvath rumbled. He turned to leave, then paused. His weapons officer stood nearby, and Kolvath made a subtle gesture. On every sensor display in the chamber, targeting locks suddenly appeared on the human delegation's ship. It was intimidation, a reminder of who held power here. The chamber froze. The Arbiter started to speak, but Chen raised one hand slightly. She turned to face Kolvath directly. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but something in it made the War Master's combat instincts activate. Do not target human ships or assets, Chen said. Each word was clear and precise. We will not warn twice. For a moment, Kolvath considered pressing the issue. His species had dominated this sector for millennia. These humans were nothing. But something in the Admiral's eyes, some cold calculation, made him hesitate. He gestured again and the targeting locks disappeared. "A misunderstanding," he said. "My officer was merely curious about your sensor profile." Chen held his gaze for 3 more seconds, then returned to studying the tactical displays as if nothing had happened. Kolvath left the chamber, but he felt something he had not experienced in many years, a tiny seed of doubt. As the council session continued, explaining protocols and procedures, Chen's officers took notes. They recorded everything: ship positions, response times, communication patterns, tactical doctrines. They watched how both sides moved their fleets, how they signaled intentions, how they followed their ancient rules. Ambassador Thelen approached Chen as the session ended. "I hope you were not offended by the War Master. He is old, set in his ways, but he is also honorable. He would never truly harm diplomats." "I'm sure," Chen said politely. "This war is terrible, but it follows laws. We protect civilians. We give warnings. We maintain civilization." Thelen's skin showed colors of earnest hope. "Perhaps fresh eyes like yours can help us find an end to it." Chen looked at him, and for just a moment, Thelen saw something in her expression that confused him. It might have been pity. "Perhaps," she said. The human delegation returned to their ship. In the observation post they would establish, in the data they would gather, they would watch and learn. They would be patient. They would follow the rules, until someone gave them a reason not to. The moon Tharsis 9 orbited a dead world in the neutral zone between the war fleets. Human engineers had built their observation post there in less than a week. A cluster of modules and sensor arrays that gave them clear sight of the entire sector. Admiral Chen spent most of her time in the command center, watching the war play out like a chess game where both players knew every possible move. The Vrexians and Kelrath continued their ancient dance. Ships moved to designated battle zones. Warnings were broadcast exactly 48 hours in advance. Fleets clashed, ships were destroyed, and then both sides withdrew to repair and prepare for the next engagement. It was warfare as ritual, as predictable as sunrise. Chen found it fascinating in the worst possible way. On her personal tablet, she kept files on every major war in human history: Thermopylae, Cannae, Agincourt, Gettysburg, the Somme, Stalingrad, Desert Storm. She had studied them all, learned from humanity's long and bloody education in the art of killing. What she saw here was not war. It was performance. "Admiral, the Curiosity is requesting clearance to enter the buffer zone," her communications officer reported. Chen pulled up the request. The HSS Curiosity was a science vessel, small and unarmed, carrying 87 researchers studying stellar phenomena. The buffer zone was neutral territory, off-limits to military vessels but technically open to civilian ships. "Clearance granted," Chen said, "but keep close monitoring. I want updates every 10 minutes. The Curiosity moved into the zone, its sensors mapping gravitational anomalies around a collapsed star. The scientists aboard were excited. This kind of stellar remnant was rare, and the data would advance human understanding of extreme physics. For 3 days, the Curiosity worked in peace. Its crew sent regular reports back to the observation post, filled with measurements and theories. They were researchers, not soldiers. Most had never even seen combat. On the 4th day, Commander Zekthar of the Vrexian Dominion sat in his ready room, reviewing recent defeats. The Kelrath had destroyed 5 of his ships in the last engagement. His superiors were displeased. He needed a victory, something to restore his honor. His tactical officer entered. "Commander, we've detected a human science vessel in the buffer zone." Zekthar looked up. "Humans, those weaklings the War Master mocked in council. They appear to be unarmed, sir." "Just conducting research," an idea formed in Zekthar's mind. The humans had been watching the war, judging them, perhaps. They sat in their observation post like they mattered. A lesson was needed. Someone had to show these newcomers that this was not their galaxy, not their war. "Prepare 3 destroyers," Zekthar ordered. "We're going to teach humanity to stay home." "Sir, they're civilians." "The buffer zone is not protected by treaty," Zekthar interrupted. "Only military vessels are forbidden. These humans violated no law, but neither does removing them. The Galactic Council will protest. We will pay a fine, and humanity will learn their place." His tactical officer hesitated, then bowed. Orders were orders. The 3 Vrexian destroyers moved quietly, using the stellar interference from the collapsed star to hide their approach. They surrounded the Curiosity before the science vessel even knew they were there. Dr. Sarah Martinez was reviewing gravitational data when the weapons lock alarm screamed. She looked up at her screens in confusion, then horror. "This is the HSS Curiosity," she transmitted. "We are a civilian research vessel. We are unarmed." The first torpedo struck the engine section." The Curiosity's shields, designed for radiation and micrometeorites, offered no protection against military weapons. The second and third torpedoes hit the habitat modules. In the observation post on Tharsis 9, "Admiral," Chen watched the Curiosity's beacon disappear from her screens. "Get me a recording of their final transmission," she said quietly. The communications officer's hands shook as he pulled up the audio. Chen listened to Dr. Martinez's voice, heard the moment the torpedoes hit, heard the screaming that lasted exactly 4 seconds before the transmission cut to static. 87 people. Scientists, engineers, researchers, dead in less than a minute. Zekthar broadcast on open channels, making sure everyone heard. "Let this be a lesson. This is not your war, humans. Go home. This galaxy belongs to those strong enough to hold it." The bridge of Chen's command ship was silent. Every officer looked at their admiral, waiting. They had all heard the screams. Chen's face showed nothing. She stood, moved to the tactical display, and began entering commands. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency, pulling up fleet positions, calculating vectors, assigning targets. "Recall all personnel to stations," she said. "Combat Readiness Alpha. Spin up the FTL drives." "Admiral, should we contact the Galactic Council?" her first officer asked. "No. The mediation protocols are no longer relevant." Chen looked up from the display. "Zekthar just taught me something important. He taught me that the galaxy thinks we're weak, that human lives don't matter, that we can be murdered without consequence." She returned to the tactical screen. "Now I'm going to teach him what happens when you make that mistake." Her communications officer spoke carefully. "Admiral, we're outnumbered. The Vrexian fleet in this sector has over 200 ships. We have 12. "I know." Chen pulled up detailed specifications on Vrexian vessels, their weapons, their shields, their tactical doctrines. She had been studying them for weeks. "Send a message to Earth. Tell them what happened. Tell them we're responding." What should we tell the Galactic Council? Chen considered this. The Council would demand she follow their protocols, their rules, their civilized way of war. They would want investigations and tribunals and diplomatic solutions. They would want her to accept the death of 87 humans as a regrettable incident. "Tell the Council to stay out of our way," she said. Within an hour, the human fleet began moving. Ships that had been stationary for weeks suddenly activated their drives, splitting into groups that made no sense to the standard doctrines of galactic warfare. They moved fast, faster than Vrexian or Kelrath vessels typically did, burning fuel in ways that seemed wasteful. On his flagship, War Master Kolvath received reports of the human fleet movement. He studied the patterns, confused. The humans were not moving toward any logical target. Their formation was chaotic, their vectors seemingly random. Ambassador Thelen contacted Admiral Chen directly. "Please, Admiral, I understand your anger. Zekthar's actions were terrible. But there are proper channels for this. The Council will punish him. The Council will find him," Chen corrected. "Pay a penalty. Write a formal apology. And tomorrow someone else will decide human lives are cheap. This is not how civilized species handle conflict. Ambassador, my people have a saying. Don't start fights you can't finish." Chen's voice was cold and clear. "Zekthar started this. Now we're going to finish it." She closed the channel. The human ships vanished from long-range sensors, dropping into FTL space. When they reappeared, they would no longer be observers. They would be something the galaxy had not seen in this sector for a very long time. They would be predators. Commander Zekthar was reviewing damage reports from the previous engagement when his tactical officer ran onto the bridge. The Vrexian scales were pale with fear, a color Zekthar had never seen on him before. "Commander, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The humans. They're here." Zekthar pulled up his sensor displays. 4 human ships had appeared at the edge of his fleet's position. Just 4 against his 47 warships. He almost laughed. "They come for revenge with 4 ships? Destroy them." His weapons officer activated targeting systems, but something was wrong. The human ships were not where the sensors said they were. The targeting computers kept losing locks, reacquiring, losing them again. "What is this?" Zekthar demanded. "Some kind of jamming, sir. I've never seen anything like it. Our sensors can't get a clear reading." Then the human ships opened fire. The first Rexian destroyer simply came apart. One moment it was there, the next it was debris. No explosion, no fire, just instant structural failure. The weapon had been invisible, faster than anything in their database. "Evasive maneuvers," Zekthar shouted. His ships began the standard combat dispersal pattern, the same pattern they had used for centuries. It was doctrine, tested and proven. It was also predictable. 3 more destroyers died in as many seconds. The human weapons moved at speeds that made conventional plasma torpedoes look like children's toys. Tungsten rods accelerated to a fraction of light speed, punched through shields designed for energy weapons. The rods simply ignored the protective fields and turned armor into vapor. "Return fire. All ships, return fire." The Vrexian fleet launched everything they had. Thousands of plasma torpedoes filled the space where the human ships had been, but the humans were no longer there. They had moved, repositioned, and were firing from different vectors before the Vrexian weapons even reached their target zones. Zekthar watched his fleet die. Ships that had survived dozens of honorable battles were being cut apart like soft tissue. The humans gave no warnings, offered no chances to surrender, followed none of the protocols that made war civilized. "Request reinforcements from War Master Kolvath," he ordered. "Tell him we're under attack. Tell him the humans are—" His communication systems went dead. Every frequency, every channel simply stopped working. The humans had cut him off from the rest of the fleet, isolated him. On the bridge of her flagship, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with cold focus. Her ships moved in patterns that would have been impossible without computer assistance. Human and AI worked together, anticipating enemy movements, calculating firing solutions, coordinating strikes across multiple ships simultaneously. "Target the command ship," she ordered. "Disable engines and weapons, but I want survivors." Her weapons officer nodded. The human ships moved with mechanical precision. They were not angry. They did not hate. They simply executed their mission with brutal efficiency. Zekthar's flagship shuddered as tungsten rods tore through the engine section. His weapons went offline. His shields collapsed. He waited for the final strike, but it never came. "Admiral," his sensor operator said quietly, "they're not destroying us. They're just stopping." Around them, the last of Zekthar's fleet was being systematically eliminated. 11 minutes after the engagement began, 47 Vrexian warships were either destroyed or crippled. The human ships had not taken a single hit. Chen opened a channel to Zekthar's ship. "Commander, you're going to survive today. We need you alive to tell everyone what happens when you kill human civilians." Zekthar said nothing. What could he say? War Master Kolvath received the distress call 17 minutes after the attack began. By the time his ships could respond, it was over. He stared at the tactical reports in disbelief. 47 ships, 11 minutes. 0 human casualties. "This is not possible," he said. His tactical advisor's voice was shaking. "War Master, the humans are not fighting like any species we know. They use no standard formations. They give no warnings. They coordinate in ways that suggest their ships think as one mind. Then we fight them in open battle. We outnumber them 20 to 1. War Master, with respect, Zekthar outnumbered them 12 to 1. Kolvath began issuing orders, calling his scattered fleet to defensive positions. But the humans were faster. While he organized his forces, human ships appeared throughout the sector. They did not appear in battle zones. They appeared at supply depots, at repair stations, at communication relays. Every piece of infrastructure that kept the Vrexian fleet operating became a target. A supply depot at Hex 7 that had served the fleet for 80 years vanished in a flash of light. Human ships jumped in, fired, and jumped out before defenders could respond. The entire attack took 30 seconds. A repair station orbiting Vrex Prime, home to thousands of engineers and support staff, was evacuated at gunpoint by human Marines who appeared from nowhere. The Marines did not kill anyone. They simply removed everyone and then destroyed the station. Communication relays across 6 systems went offline simultaneously. The Vrexian fleet was suddenly blind, unable to coordinate. Each ship commander isolated and uncertain. Kolvath's flagship received damage reports faster than he could read them. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. They struck from impossible angles. They used faster-than-light jumps in ways that should have been suicidal, appearing inside defensive perimeters, firing, and vanishing before counterattacks could be organized. Ambassador Theln watched from his observation platform, his skin cycling through colors of distress. He contacted Admiral Chen again. "This is not warfare, Admiral. This is extermination." Chen's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired, but her eyes were as cold as the void between stars. "You're wrong, Ambassador. This is exactly what warfare looks like when you remove the rules. When you kill civilians without warning. When you decide some lives don't matter." She leaned forward slightly. "Zekathar wanted to teach us a lesson. Now everyone is learning what happens when you teach humans that civilized behavior is weakness. Please, Admiral. Enough people have died. 87 people died on the Curiosity, Ambassador. They were scientists. They had families. They were not soldiers." Chen's voice never rose, but something in it made Theln's skin flash warning colors. "We're not finished. Not yet." Across the sector, the Vrexian Dominion's military structure began to collapse, not because human ships were destroying everything, but because Chen was methodical. She targeted command, control, communications, and logistics. She turned a fighting force into confused, scattered groups that could not coordinate, could not resupply, could not even talk to each other. And through it all, human ships moved like ghosts, appearing and disappearing, striking with precision that seemed impossible. On his flagship, Kolvath finally understood. These humans did not fight for honor. They did not fight for territory. They fought to win, completely and without mercy. He had seen this kind of warfare before, but only in historical records of primitive species that destroyed themselves. He had assumed such brutality was something civilizations evolved past. He had been wrong. The humans had not evolved past it. They had simply been waiting for someone to remind them why such warfare existed. 72 hours after the Curiosity was destroyed, the Vrexian Dominion's military structure had ceased to exist as a functional fighting force. Ships that had survived the initial attacks were scattered, hiding in asteroid fields and behind moons, too afraid to move because human vessels appeared whenever they tried to regroup. War Master Kolvath sat in his command chamber, surrounded by reports of defeat. Half his fleet was destroyed. The other half was combat ineffective, cut off from supply lines and unable to coordinate. Repair stations were gone. Communication networks were silent. 300 years of military tradition had been dismantled in 3 days. He made a decision that he knew would define him forever. "Target human colonies in the neighboring sectors," he ordered. "If we're going to fall, they fall with us." His officers stared at him in shock. Attacking civilian populations was forbidden by every galactic law. It was the one line no species crossed, the rule that separated civilized beings from monsters. "War Master, this violates—" "They violated it first." Kolvath's voice cracked through the chamber. "They murdered Zekthar's fleet without warning. They destroyed our infrastructure. They fight without honor. So we respond in kind. Orders went out to every remaining Vrexian ship. Coordinates of human colony worlds were distributed. 23 ships capable of combat began moving toward human space, intent on revenge. They never made it past the sector boundary. Human defensive forces had been waiting. Admiral Chen had known this response was possible. She had studied enough desperate commanders in human history to predict the pattern. When conventional warfare fails, target civilians. It was the oldest, ugliest move in any playbook. The Vrexian strike force jumped into what they thought was empty space. Instead, they found human warships positioned precisely to intercept. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 6 minutes. Every Vrexian ship was destroyed before they could fire a single shot at a colony. Chen watched from her flagship, feeling nothing. Just emptiness where emotion should have been. "Ma'am, we've located War Master Kolvath's fortress station," her tactical officer reported. "It's in the Vrex home system, heavily defended." "Send in the Marines," Chen said. The fortress station was a marvel of Vrexian engineering, a structure that had never been breached in 200 years of service. Its shields could withstand sustained bombardment. Its weapons could destroy a fleet. It was home to 10,000 soldiers and the command staff that directed the entire Dominion military. Human assault ships bypassed the shields using a method the Rexians had never considered. Instead of attacking the shields directly, the humans simply turned off their own defensive fields and flew through at specific frequencies. The shields were designed to stop weapons, not ships that were effectively invisible to them. The Marines that poured into the fortress wore powered armor and carried weapons that made Rexian defensive positions evaporate. But they did not simply kill everyone they encountered. They moved with purpose, targeting command centers, securing strategic locations, capturing rather than executing. The fighting was brutal but brief. Rexian soldiers, trained for honorable combat in designated zones, could not adapt to humans who fought in hallways, who used grenades in enclosed spaces, who moved through the station like they had built it themselves. Kolvath stood in his command center as human Marines breached the final door. He raised his weapons, prepared to die with honor. "Drop them," the lead Marine said through his helmet speaker. "Admiral's orders. You're wanted alive." Kolvath considered fighting anyway. Death in battle was preferable to capture. But he was tired, and some part of him wanted to understand these humans who had destroyed everything he knew. He dropped his weapons. They brought him to Admiral Chen's flagship, to a simple meeting room with no decorations. Chen sat across from him, just the two of them and 2 guards by the door. "You're monsters," Kolvath said. "You give no quarter, no honor. You fight like animals." Chen studied him for a long moment. "Do you remember the Curiosity? The science vessel? Do you remember it?" Chen's voice was harder now. 87 scientists. They were unarmed. They were conducting research. They had no military value whatsoever. And Zekthar killed them to teach us a lesson. One commander's mistake is the responsibility of the war master who commands him. Chen leaned forward. Those scientists begged for mercy in their final seconds. "I have the audio recordings. Would you like to hear them?" Kolvath said nothing. "You called us monsters for not giving quarter, but your subordinate murdered civilians without warning, without mercy, without even a declaration of intent. He did it because he thought we were weak, because he thought human lives were cheap." Chen's hands were flat on the table, perfectly still. "So let me explain something to you, War Master. When you attack someone's civilians as a lesson, you better be ready for them to teach you a lesson in return. And humanity has spent 10,000 years learning how to teach that particular lesson very well." The door opened. Ambassador Thelen entered, his skin showing colors of deep distress. "Admiral, the Galactic Council demands you cease all military operations immediately. They threaten sanctions, isolation, and—" "Let them," Chen said, not taking her eyes off Kolvath. "I'll speak to the Council when I'm finished here." An hour later, Chen's face appeared on every communication screen in the sector. Every species, every ship, every station received the broadcast. "My name is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. 3 days ago, a Rexian commander named Zekthar murdered 87 human civilians without warning or justification. He did it to teach humanity a lesson about our place in this galaxy." She paused, letting that sink in. "Consider this our response. Humanity did not seek this war. We came as observers, as potential mediators, as newcomers hoping to learn from older civilizations. We were patient. We were peaceful. We followed your rules." Her expression hardened. "Then one of you decided that murdering our people was acceptable, that human lives could be taken without consequence. So let me be very clear to every species watching this. We don't fight for honor. We don't fight for glory. We don't fight according to ancient protocols that turn warfare into theater. We fight to win, completely, overwhelmingly. And we will never ever forget those who harm our civilians." She looked directly into the camera. "To the Kelrath Coalition, we have no quarrel with you. Remain neutral and we remain at peace. To every other species in this sector, understand this. We wanted to be your partners, your friends. But we will never be your victims. Attack our people, and you will face everything that 10,000 years of human warfare can teach. We remember, we adapt, and we do not lose." The broadcast ended. Ambassador Thelen found Chen on the observation deck later, looking out at the stars. "The Council is terrified," he said quietly. "They've never seen warfare like this." "I know." Chen's voice was tired now, the command presence fading. They fought their civilized wars with their civilized rules, and nobody ever had to face real consequences. And now they do. Now they do. Chen turned to face him. Ambassador, I want you to understand something. I take no joy in this. Every ship I destroyed, every life ended, it all sits on my conscience. But I had a choice. Let the murder of my people go unpunished and teach the galaxy that humans are acceptable targets, or respond with enough force that nobody ever makes that mistake again. Thelan's skin showed colors of understanding, perhaps even sympathy. You chose to be feared rather than victimized. I chose to protect my species, Chen corrected. Fear is just the tool I have to use. Across the sector, Vrexian ships began broadcasting surrender signals. Without orders, without coordination, with no hope of victory, they simply gave up. It was over. The war that had lasted 300 years ended in 3 days. 6 weeks after the Curiosity was destroyed, the Galactic Council chamber looked different. The same structure floated in the void between stars, but the atmosphere inside had changed fundamentally. Species that had once argued with casual arrogance now spoke carefully. Eyes that had dismissed the human delegation now watched Admiral Chen with wary respect. The Vrexian Dominion no longer existed as a military power. What remained was a scattered group of worlds trying to rebuild civilian governance. War Master Kolvath and Commander Zekthar sat in detention, awaiting trial for war crimes. The charges had been filed by humanity, supported by a dozen species who had remained silent about Vrexian aggression for centuries. Chen stood before the council, no longer at the observation platform below the main table. She stood at the table itself, an equal among equals. Nobody had argued when she took the position. The tribunal is established, the arbiter announced. Commander Zekthar will face charges of murder of civilian personnel. War Master Kolvath will face charges of ordering attacks on civilian populations. A Vrexian delegate, one of the few remaining, spoke quietly. We accept the tribunal's authority. We ask only that justice be fair. Justice will be thorough, Chen replied, and it will be public. Every species in this galaxy will see what happens to those who target civilians. Ambassador Thelan rose, his skin displaying formal colors. The Kelrath Coalition wishes to propose a formal peace treaty. The war that consumed our sector for 3 centuries is over. We propose that former Vrexian territories be placed under temporary council oversight to prevent power vacuums. An elder species representative, a being whose civilization had existed for millions of years, spoke for the first time. Its voice was like distant thunder. The council suggests that humanity oversee these territories. You dismantled the Vrexian military. You have the strength to maintain order. Chen considered this. We'll accept temporary oversight with strict conditions. We're not conquerors. We're not building an empire. We'll maintain peace, help establish stable governance, and then we'll leave. How can we trust that? Another delegate asked. Because unlike some species, we remember what empires cost. Chen pulled up historical data on human civilizations. We've built empires. We've torn them down. We've learned those lessons in blood. We're not interested in repeating them. The elder being made a sound that might have been approval. Humanity is young, but you learn quickly. We had good teachers, Chen said. All the species that came before us. We studied your histories, your wars, your mistakes. She looked around the chamber. Some of you thought we were primitive because we came to the stars late. But we had 10,000 years of history before we left our homeworld. We had time to learn every lesson warfare can teach. A delegate from a peaceful species spoke nervously. Admiral, your display of force was overwhelming. Many species are frightened. They worry that humanity will become the new dominant military power. Good, Chen said simply. Fear keeps people careful. Fear makes them think twice before attacking others. She softened slightly. But understand, we don't want to be the galaxy's military force. We want to be traders, explorers, scientists. We want to learn from you and share what we know. We came here hoping for peace. And when peace was broken? Thelan asked. Then we responded. We will always respond. Chen turned to address the entire chamber. Let me be clear about something. Humanity is not interested in your wars. We're not interested in conquest or domination, but we are interested in protecting our people and our interests. Anyone who threatens those will face the same response that the Vrexian Dominion faced. The elder being spoke again. There are some among us who studied humanity before you were invited to this council. We accessed your planetary databases, read your histories, analyzed your development. It paused. We thought you had evolved past your violent nature. We were wrong. We didn't evolve past it, Chen corrected. We learned to control it. We learned when violence is necessary and when it's not. The problem is that some of you mistook our control for weakness. And now the galaxy knows better, the being said. The Kelrath Coalition formally offered an alliance. The treaty was generous, offering trade agreements, technology exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. They were clearly eager to ensure humanity viewed them as friends rather than future targets. Chen negotiated carefully. She secured fair terms for both sides, established clear boundaries, and insisted on clauses that protected civilian populations. The treaty that emerged was unlike anything the galaxy had seen, because it was built on the assumption that breaking it would have immediate and overwhelming consequences. Other species began approaching human delegations with similar offers. Nobody wanted to be on the wrong side of humanity's military capabilities. Some offers were genuine, seeking real partnership. Others were clearly motivated by fear. Chen accepted the genuine offers and politely declined the others. "We're not interested in alliances built on fear," she told one delegate. "We're interested in partners who value the same things we do. Peace, trade, mutual respect. If you're only talking to us because you're scared, then we're not interested." The word spread quickly. Humanity was powerful but not aggressive. Deadly but not cruel. They had clear lines, and as long as you didn't cross them, they were good partners. As the council session concluded, Chen walked through the corridors alone. She had dismissed her security detail. Needing a moment of quiet, she found herself at an observation window looking out at the stars. The door behind her opened. A young officer approached hesitantly. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, fresh from the academy, barely 25 years old. "Admiral, I hope I'm not interrupting." "It's fine, Lieutenant. What do you need?" Webb stood beside her at the window. "I wanted to ask you something. About the war. About what we did." Chen waited. "Was it worth it?" Webb asked quietly. "The cost. The ships we destroyed. The lives ended. 87 people died, and in response we killed thousands. Was that justice or revenge?" Chen looked at him, seeing herself 20 years ago in his uncertainty. "You want me to give you an easy answer? To tell you it was clearly right or clearly wrong? I want to know what you think." "I think 87 people died because someone thought humans were weak," Chen said. "I think they thought we would accept their deaths, file complaints with the council, and do nothing. And if we had done nothing, then tomorrow it would have been 87 more. Next month, 800. Next year, 8,000. She turned back to the stars. "We sent a message, Lieutenant. We sent it in a language that every species in this galaxy understands. The message was simple: human lives matter. Attack our civilians, and you won't face trials or fines or diplomatic protests. You'll face total war, conducted by people who have spent 10,000 years perfecting it." So it was worth it. Across this galaxy right now, 1,000 species are looking at humanity differently. They're not seeing us as newcomers anymore. They're not seeing us as weak. And because of that, 1,000 potential attacks on human ships, human colonies, human people won't happen. Those people will live because we showed the galaxy what happens when you hurt us. Chen met his eyes. "Is that worth the price we paid? Is that worth the weight we carry?" "You tell me, Lieutenant." Webb was quiet for a long moment. "I think I understand." "Good. Because we're going to carry this weight for the rest of our lives. Every person who died in those 3 days, they're part of us now. Part of humanity's legacy in the stars." Chen's voice was soft. "We came to the galaxy hoping to be explorers and scientists. Instead, we had to teach an old lesson. Sometimes the only way to ensure peace is to be so terrifyingly good at war that nobody wants to test you." They stood together in silence, looking out at the galaxy that humanity had changed forever. Out there, somewhere, the memorial for the Curiosity's crew floated in space near where they had died. 87 names carved in metal, a reminder of why humanity had responded the way it did. Chen had visited the memorial before coming to the council. She had stood before those names and made a promise. Their deaths would not be meaningless. Their murders would be the last time anyone thought human civilians were acceptable targets. She had kept that promise. Behind them, the door opened again. Ambassador Thelen entered, his skin showing respectful colors. "Admiral, the Kelrath Coalition would like to invite you to our home world. They want to establish an embassy." Chen nodded. "We'll send diplomats. They specifically requested you. Why? Because you're the human who showed them what your species is truly capable of. And they want to make sure that capability is always aimed away from them. Chen smiled slightly. It was not a happy expression. Tell them I'll come, but remind them that we're not interested in showing our strength anymore. We've made our point. Now we want to build something better. As Theln left, Webb spoke again. Do you think it will work? Can we really go back to being explorers and scientists after this? We have to, Chen said. Because if we don't, if we become defined by our capacity for violence, then we've lost something important. We had to show the galaxy what happens when they push us. But now we have to show them who we really are when nobody's pushing. She turned from the window. Come on, Lieutenant. We have work to do. The war is over. Now comes the harder part, building a peace that lasts. They walked together through the corridors of the council chamber, past delegates who watched Admiral Chen with expressions that mixed respect and fear. Humanity had entered the galactic community, not as conquerors or victims, but as something the galaxy had not seen in a long time. They had arrived as a species that understood peace, valued it, and would fight with absolute ferocity to protect it. The galaxy would not soon forget.